The phrase, reboots we didn't know we needed, is something you won't hear because people only reboot what was liked and good enough to warrant a reboot. When I think of great reboots, I think of Dune, Batman Begins, Mad Max, and all of these franchises had a following that pleaded for the reboot, and the hype for all these newer iterations was massive. I can't say the same for Top Gun. Personally, I wasn't raised on Top Gun as an American classic like a lot of people were. I didn't have my family pass it on to me like they did with other 80s classics like Rocky or Predator. Maybe it's because those movies weren't romances. But I made the effort to watch the original Top Gun a few days before I went to see Maverick, and I have to say the movie overall was mediocre. I'll get into more of my complaints later in this video, but I was wondering how they would work on these weaker aspects in the sequel, and I have to say after watching Maverick, they did everything right. This is how to revive a bad franchise. Let's start with my thoughts on the original Top Gun. Top Gun has some beautiful cinematography, but the movie is definitely dated. It has some of that 80s cheesiness, which isn't necessarily a horrible thing, but the movie doesn't come off any better because of it. The relationships between the characters feel weird and strained, and a lot of the emotions seem implied rather than explained through a gradual series of events. For example, the Iceman-Maverick rivalry never really feels like a rivalry, just like two dudes who know one of them is going to come out on top. And the romance aspect of this film feels so weird and rushed. If we look at the love between Charlie and Maverick, it all starts because he decides to sing to her and they have a coincidental reunion, but besides that, it doesn't feel like they have a deeper connection. Top Gun tries to juggle a lot of plots at once, from being a movie about competition at a military academy to a romance to a story about a son trying to learn the truth about his father. This last bit of Maverick wanting to find out what happened to his dad was really the only interesting part of the movie to me, but this plot seems to be brought in and then forgotten about until the ending act of the movie. It doesn't stay there as a constant motivating force for Maverick to try and uncover the truth, it seems more like he brings it up when it is convenient for himself. But no one cares about that. Watching Top Gun for the plot is like watching porn for the story. All we care about in this movie are the flying scenes. Well, the flying scenes in Top Gun aren't that great either. I understand there were a lot of limitations at the time, but the camera seems to mostly focus on the pilots in the cockpits, and it's just shots of their faces with them saying dialogue, and it expects us to keep up and care. When we barely see shots of the actual planes, it becomes really boring and dry watching this movie. The last complaint that I'll say for the original is that it feels like it has no purpose. We aren't told why Maverick cares so much about being number one, or any of the other pilots for that matter. We aren't told why Charlie cares so much about Maverick, since all he did was sing a song for her. The plot in this movie just seems like excuses to have awesome looking scenes, but that justification for why the scenes is happening is simply not there. And this justification is needed when telling a story. The only part of this movie that adds some purpose was the aspect of Maverick's dad's mystery, but that seems like an afterthought until the end of the movie. Even then, it's not as explained as well as it could have been to add that meaningful punch to the movie. I get that I've been shitting on Top Gun for the entire video so far, but I by no means completely dislike this movie. I think Top Gun has a super unique charm, and it might be due to the badass nature of the movie or Tom Cruise's charm, but Top Gun was definitely extremely impressive for its time. It's just that from a critical film perspective, the movie isn't that great. I can still like something but concede to you that objectively it's not the best movie. Top Gun has its place in pop culture, but it hasn't cemented the same adoration that other movies and franchises have garnered, and I think there is a very simple reason for this. The reason why Top Gun hasn't held the same legacy as other classics like Rocky or Apocalypse Now is because it lacks the purpose component that those films had, but Top Gun Maverick came and solved all of this. Top Gun Maverick still has some of that cheesiness, but it doesn't overdo it. This movie does a great job of paying homage to the original, while at the same time giving us something new and interesting. The movie fills in the audience on all the necessary events from the first movie, so that even people who haven't watched the original can get caught up and understand what's going on. Everything seems to work, and the most obvious thing that this movie is benefiting from is the fact that it was released 36 years after the original. The most obvious upgrade is in the flying scenes. The flying scenes in this movie are incredible. I watched this movie in IMAX and you can feel the engines and everything that's going on. Top Gun, the original, or Maverick always have the ability to inspire the audience to become pilots regardless of how dangerous the job is, and Top Gun Maverick continues the trend. We get to see a lot more of what's going on outside the planes, which I absolutely loved, but this is obviously in large part due to the technology that we have today. We don't get a lot of shots of the characters just talking in the cockpits while flying like in Top Gun 1, since we have the technology now to be able to film scenes like fighter jets speeding through a valley or shooting other planes. Top Gun Maverick also has meaningful characters and motivations that go beyond just the surface. Rooster wants to be the best because that's all he knows, since it runs in his family. And at the same time, Rooster is rightfully angry at Maverick because he pulled his papers from the Navy for seemingly no reason. But we as the audience can also sympathize with Maverick's position. The rivalry between the characters seems much more prevalent, as we see Hangman be a typical jock who just wants to satisfy his vanity and status among his peers. Iceman in the original came off more as a stoic pilot, rather than as the true antagonist to Maverick, and here they make his future counterpart Hangman actually an antagonist who goes out of his way to berate others. This helps to build on that rivalry that we didn't get in the original. Top Gun Maverick also just has a great satisfying ending that feels deserved. We expect them to kill off Maverick and have Rooster mourn his loss, but instead what the movie gives us is much greater and less predictable. The movie gives us the proper character turns for all of the pilots by having Rooster and Maverick settle their feud through their actions and prove that they both have a deep compassion for each other. We even see characters who feel forgotten about be put to use, like with Hangman at the end, as he saves Maverick and Rooster and he changes to a much more likable character. The purpose element that I was talking about earlier is there with this movie as it deals with Maverick trying to find purpose in his life, and he's not just a young bachelor anymore. Top Gun Maverick takes the good scenes from the original and makes them great by adding that extra layer of meaning. For example, with Rooster we see him play the same song that his dad used to play on the piano. In the original, when Goose played this song, it was just corny and he did it because it was fun. But in this movie, Rooster plays this song because it's fun, but also to demonstrate how similar he is to his dad and how the apple truly hasn't fallen far from the tree. This also foreshadows how his drive is similar to his father's and that he wants to be among the best pilots in the world. Another example is the beach volleyball scene from the original. In the original, this scene was just there to look cool and show us ripped dudes living the high life. Really, this plot excursion was just there to show us some juiced up guys. But in Top Gun Maverick, the beach football scene pays homage to the original volleyball scene, but it adds on that extra layer of meaning by letting the scene have a purpose. In this movie, the beach scene isn't just there for fun, it's to show us that Maverick truly wants to build a team within this group of pilots. The camaraderie here is meant to act as a gradual segue to the synergy of the pilots on the field. We also see how Maverick is becoming older. We see Iceman in the film and he's clearly not the same person he used to be when he was younger. I understand that this is the movie adapting Val Kilmer's real life situation into the plot, but I love how seamless this reality to movie transition is, since it works within the narrative so beautifully. Iceman represents to Maverick what will inevitably happen, since time will get us all. This prompts Maverick to do more with his life, like giving back knowledge to his pilots and eventually settling down so he can have a more fulfilling life himself. Going back to the ending, this movie allows for a satisfying conclusion that has meaning by showing us that Maverick is able to continue into his next chapter of life by getting a family. He finds Penny and he can act as her daughter's dad, since her real dad is barely around. The ending dynamic between Rooster and Maverick seems natural, and Rooster fills that void that was left by Goose's sudden death. Top Gun Maverick as a whole took what worked in the original and adapted it to modern times while adding in its own twist, and this is really how all reboots should be done. Top Gun Maverick takes on the original and then updates it in a beautiful way. This movie adds onto the risk factor that the original really didn't have, and it feels like the characters truly have something to lose. I also love how Top Gun Maverick fills in the audience so they don't have to watch the original, because the original in my honest opinion isn't that great of a movie. But this also helps with newer fans who don't have time to watch the original before seeing this movie. Top Gun Maverick is a great film. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that's the next Parasite or Everything Everywhere All at Once, but this movie isn't meant to be as deep as those films. Top Gun Maverick is meant to be a giant blockbuster that demands your attendance at a theater to truly experience it, and man does this movie do a great job at that. Top Gun Maverick does exactly what it sets out to do by having your eyes glued to the screen for its entire runtime. This movie will 100% go down as one that we'll tell our kids about, and we'll say that you had to be there in the theater to experience it. Guys, that is all I have for this video. A lot of time and effort goes into making these videos, and I'm a one-man band over here, so all the support you guys provide really means a lot to me. Please check out some of my other videos. I try my best to make original content over things that haven't been talked about, and if you made it this far, I just want to say thank you, I love you, and I genuinely hope that you have a great rest of your day.